What's up, guys? I'm Joel Dodge. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about something I think is super important, is why is there so much suffering in the world from a Christian perspective. And the reason I really want to talk about this is because anyone who's started thinking about God and whether he exists or not, the most asked question is, why is there so much suffering if God exists? And I'm not trying to come with this video and give you all the answers or something like this, but I'm really hoping that if you're a Christian that you're going to feel challenged to think about this more and pray about this more. And if you're not a Christian, you're watching this, I hope maybe you'll walk away kind of seeing how Christians feel about this more, and maybe see a little bit more of the logic behind some of the beliefs of Christianity. So all that being said, I think this question is actually very important to God. And the reason I say that is, despite of what a lot of people might think, Genesis wasn't actually the first book of the Bible written. The book of Job was actually the first book written. And why do I think that's important, and why did I think that shows something about God's nature? It's because the book of Job is actually a book that's completely written to answer this question of, why do innocent people suffer? You know, it gives you this person who's righteous in God's eyes. So in other words, God doesn't have anything to accuse him of. But he basically goes through the worst experiences you could go through as a human being. I wanted to point something out, is if you look at what Job's friends say about him, they're constantly accusing him of doing something that makes him deserve what he's going through. And what you'll find interesting is that at the end of the book, when God actually comes and talks to them, talks to Job and talks to his friends, you see that God is actually frustrated with Job's friends for accusing him of deserving it. The reason I think that's important to say that is, a lot of Christians, when they're asked this question, is, why is there so much suffering in the world? Why does the world have so many terrible things happen? A lot of Christians will answer that we deserve it, basically, that we're all sinners and that we've fallen. Even though I agree with the fact that we are all sinners and that none of us are perfect, I don't agree with the fact that we all deserve the terrible things that happen in life. I don't think that any kids who have died of starvation deserve that. I don't think that people who've died of cancer deserve that. I just don't believe that. And I don't think that's what the Bible's trying to say either. And I think it's when we dumb it down that much and say that people who suffer deserve the suffering, you're not really looking at the question from a biblical point of view. And the way that God reacted to these people saying that you suffer because you're sin, he rebukes them for it. And it really reminds me how Jesus dealt with the Pharisees. How he was constantly coming against this black and white kind of world. It's way more complex than we try to make it sometimes, especially as Christians. So I wanted to say all that the answer to the question of why do people suffer is not as simple as we're all sinners. That's why I think it's so important that the book of Job puts this question in this way, where it says, why does an innocent person suffer? Because that's the question we all need answered. It's not hard for anybody to understand why somebody who did terrible things ends up suffering in the end. It's hard to understand it when they didn't deserve it. But the other thing that a lot of people say is that it's okay that Job went through all that stuff because God doubled everything he had afterwards. And I also think that's a very narrow-minded way to look at it. And mainly for this reason, is that part of what happens to Job is that he loses his children, right? And at the end of the story, God does give him back everything he lost, and he gets more children. I think anyone who honestly thinks about the story and thinks about what it's like for a parent to lose their children realizes that just getting more children afterwards doesn't really fix the fact that they lost children in the first place. So I think that's a very dumbed down answer also. I think what is going on with Job is something that's very much more complex and something that really needs to be thought about and talked about more to what is the point of the story. Because he's not suffering because of anything he did, right? He's innocent. In the end, he does have double everything that he lost, but it doesn't change the fact that he lost everything in the first place. So that's why I think this book is just, it's a very important book of the Bible, and I think that's why it was the first book ever written. It's because it's trying to tackle some of the most important questions we need answered as humans trying to interact with God. So all that being said, I have 2 points that I want to make about why God allows suffering in the world. So the first thing that I want to say about why I believe that God allows suffering to be in the world is that suffering shows us when something isn't how it's supposed to be. And I actually heard this guy who's awesome talk about this, Ravi Zacharias, and he gave this example of a little girl who never developed pain sensory in her body, and that her parents were just always terrified that she was going to do something that really harmed herself and not even know, because she doesn't feel pain. So you can think of like when little kids touch a hot stove or something like that, how it teaches them to not continue to do those things. I think that all the suffering and pain in the world is something very similar to that. I think the reason that there's so much suffering in the world and that we're so aware of it is because the world is not how it's supposed to be. The fact that we do feel the pain of it, and the fact that we do understand that like it's a terrible thing for kids to starve, or it's a terrible thing for people to die of cancer. But the fact that we do understand that means that we can actually try to make them better. And I think that is part of the reason God leaves pain in the world, is so that we don't become blind to the worst things that happen. Because not that we can fix everything, but if you take that mindset on and say, when something is hurting people, when something seems painful, that maybe I can do something to help, it gives us the chance to make the world a better place. But if we never felt that pain, then we wouldn't have a reason to try to do better, to try to fix the things that are broken in the world we live in. So I think that's the first thing, is that pain helps us see how things aren't right. And and maybe you could say, oh, well, why wouldn't we just live in a world where like everything's perfect all the time? And that's a good question. Personally, I think that the fact that there's pain and that it's a call to action of people to try to make the world a better place gives us more meaning and value in life. And that obviously that's something that's debatable, but I believe that personally. And so that's how I've started seeing pain in the world, is that it's a call to action to say, what can I do to help somebody go through less pain than they are right now? And the second point I wanted to make is actually very similar to that, but I think it is different, and it kind of takes that whole idea to the next step. So innocent people suffering, or innocent things suffering, is a call to change. It's a call to, as Christians would say, to repentance. The thing that causes somebody who is doing something wrong to realize that they're doing something wrong is when somebody innocent suffers for it. You can think about it from a lot of different ways, but I honestly believe that the only time that we really feel like we need to change as people, as humans, is when we see somebody suffering for our actions. And that can even be that we're causing ourselves to suffer, but typically it's when we realize that we're causing someone else to suffer. You could even think about it like this: it's like, well, why is it wrong to steal? It's because of what it does to the other person, right? Because if you were only looking at it as a one-way street, then it would be good to steal, because you didn't have a thing and then you went and took it from somebody else and now you have a thing. The reason we understand it's wrong to steal is because there's a victim. Without there being victims, we don't realize where we're wrong. And that's why the story of Jesus coming to earth, he gets murdered for only doing good things. Christians consider that to be the best example of a call to repentance, because it shines a light on how bad we can be as humans. That someone that only does good to us, we can turn around and do such evil back to. And I challenge you to think about this. Think about all those moments in your life where you really realized that you needed to change the way you were living. And think about if there was a victim involved. Think about if there was somebody that you were doing something wrong to, and that's what helped you realize you needed to change. I think that you'll find that that's the case. To me, those are two very logical reasons that God would allow pain to be in the world, and it's ultimately for us to realize that change needs to happen, whether that's change within our own hearts or that's change like something that we need to do to try to help other people. But I think that's why God left pain in the world, and I would love to hear your thoughts about that down below. But from a more spiritual or emotional perspective, I think that pain gives us an opportunity to come closer to God. That point, I know, like for people who don't believe in God, that point probably doesn't mean anything. I'm saying this more for those of you who are Christians and do believe in God. Pain draws us closer to God. Our pain has the potential to. And the reason I'm saying this is a spiritual or emotional thing is you could think of if you're married or if you're in a serious relationship, or even you could just think of family relationships. When I feel the closest to my wife or any of my family members is when we've worked through a disagreement that we've had. And I challenge you to think about that in your own life. I think that is when relationships are at their strongest, is when you've come to agree about something or process something together that you can see eye to eye despite of originally being in conflict with each other. I think that as Christians, when we go through hard times, it naturally makes us feel like we're in a state of conflict with God. And at least I know that's the case for me. But what I've found is as I process those hard things, but then find a way to trust God and believe in God, despite of the conflict, despite of the challenge, it's when I've found that I'm the closest to God. And actually the reason I wanted to say this is that's what I see in the book of Job. I see that Job went through all these terrible things. His wife even tells him to curse God and die. But instead of doing that, he says, I'm going to bless the Lord. It's like he gives and he takes away. So ultimately, I think that's the one that's the closest to God's heart out of all these reasons I've given, is because God wants us to learn how to rely on him, despite of going through hard things. When I wrote the single I released recently called In This Storm, I wrote that song to kind of process the whole feeling of going through a hard time, in which I used the storm as a picture of that, of like facing a hard time. And the ultimate conclusion of that song is saying, I'm going to trust you, God. That's been the underlying message in my life personally of all the hard things that I've gone through. There's a value there because we learn how to be more intimate and trust God more than we did before. So all that being said, I hope that maybe this video has challenged you to think about struggles and why we struggle, and maybe it'll challenge you to go read the book of Job and think about it more. I think that question is very important to God because it's something that's so important to us. And I think ultimately God cares about the stuff that matters to us. I think that God understands that it's hard to face the things that we go through. And I think for a lot of people who don't believe in God, having a good answer to these questions can really help them understand that, like, that people who believe in God aren't just crazy, But other than that, I'll catch you next time.